In this movie, we're going to take all of the things we've learned throughout the title and put it together into the creation of a piece of artwork from scratch. And I'm going to start off by talking about how bristles and brush strokes take on added importance. They can even become the subject of a painting. Strokes made up of solid color tend to be static. In this movie, we're going to go ahead and take all of the things we've learned in the previous chapters and put them together into a project, which in this case is going to be an image painted from scratch. And specifically, I want to talk about when you're painting from scratch, brush strokes take on added importance. They can even become the subject. Strokes made up of solid color tend to be static. An approach to visually energizing strokes is to utilize a loaded brush technique. This technique applies multiple colors to the brush. The result is a stroke rich with color, energy, and complexity. To do this, we're going to be creating a mixing layer, and I want to explain what this is. This is just going to be a layer that later on is going to be discarded. Photoshop currently doesn't have any kind of palette that you can mix color in, so we are cobbling one together just by having a layer that will later on not be part of the artwork. And if you're working with imagery that is in a specific format in terms of its size, you may want to use the extend canvas command to temporarily make your canvas a little larger wherever you prefer. I tend to do it over on the left side, but in this case, I'm just going to paint right on the edge of the current image. But in the case of a specific image format, you may want to add that imagery, go ahead and mix there, create the image, and when you're done, delete that layer and then crop the image down to the size that is in accordance with your project. So we've created a layer. I'm now going to start using my brushes, and these tool presets are brushes that are included in your exercise files. I showed you how to import this library in the Organizing the Tool Presets panel movie. But these brushes are not required for this chapter. You can create your own brushes based on what you've learned in the mixer brush and bristle tips chapters. And hopefully you will. That's the way you're going to get the best result. Use your own brushes. Now, before I start, I want to show you something you can do with the tool presets. There's some brushes I'm going to want to use in here. I want to use the floppy brushes right here, and they're towards the bottom of the list. And I'm also going to want to be using these blunt brushes. Now, the way I've got this configured right now, it's a little difficult to have all of these appear in the same location in my list. So as a result, I would have to be moving up and down the list to get to different brushes. But you can reorganize these brushes. And the way to do that is in the Tool Presets panel, go to the flyout menu and drop down to Preset Manager. And this is where I can now go in here and take these floppy brushes. Now, if I hold down my Shift key, I'll just click on the three here that I think I'm going to be using. And I'm going to put them between the long and short round blunt brushes. So now they're relocated within that list. So I can say I'm done. And the other thing I can do is these icons actually make these list entries a little larger. So the other thing I'm going to do here is just say text only. And you can see now I can get 2 or 3 more brushes to appear in that panel. But now I can set this up so that I have my blunt long and blunt short, as well as the floppy brushes all available within that window. And that's how you can easily organize these brushes to your liking. So we've got a basic layer here, and this is going to be my mixing layer. I'm going to use this to then start mixing some colors. And the advantage to this is when you know what your subject is going to be, if you take the time to pre-mix your colors, you're going to end up with a much more color organized result in the final image because some forethought was put into what colors you're using and what values, scale, all of these things come into play. So creating the colors you're going to use up front will result in a better organized image as the final product. Now, I know this is going to be a beach scene, so I'm going to have some water, some sky, some sand color, some flora green. So I'm going to mix these basic colors. And I start with a opaque brush, and I'll just kind of put some color samples on here. The idea here is that we're going to create a loaded brush technique. So having different values is going to enrich the stroke when we paint with it. Now, the other thing I'll do is I'll take the blender brush and I'll just kind of mix these up. So now this gives me not 3 colors, but now I've got several colors within here, as a range of that blue. The other thing I can do is now I can take like another color, like I'll take this one, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to turn texture on. And I can play around with how this is going to look. I'm going to use this texture, and I like the way it looks within the stroke. I might want to play around a little bit with the depth. Ultimately, I want to be able to press down and get a fully loaded stroke that's solid, but I do like to have in the lighter areas of the stroke some bristling appearing. And close this now. And I'll just test it over here. And I need to, in this case, get my opaque brush. Now I can see where I can have some color, but still some white showing through. This lets me just paint into this area, and I may be able to sample this so that not only do I have some transition of color in my stroke, but I've even got some heavier color that's peppered into that color. And just to show you what I mean, if I go in here now and I'm using the front barrel button on my stylus, I can grab, say, right here, and when I paint with this stroke, you can see how there's variation within the colors in that stroke. And that's all based on picking up all of these various tonalities and color differences, so that it gives me a way to get a stroke that is far more interesting than, say, just a flat colored stroke. And that's the idea behind this. Mixing these colors in advance is going to give me areas I can sample to get this look within the strokes. So I'm going to go through now and mix up all of my colors. Okay, I've now got my color palette of mixed colors created. I'm now going to start off, and I'm going to start off by painting in my sky. So I'm just going to grab some mixed color here, and I want to do this on an individual layer. And that's part of the trick here is don't get confused and accidentally start painting on your mixing layer. Typically, you're going to be doing it away from here, and if you make a mistake, you can do a selection and delete it. But I'm just telling you, it is kind of easy to sometimes accidentally find yourself painting on the mixer layer. So you've got to watch what you're doing over here. And I'm going to now create my background layer and start putting in some sky. Applying some discipline during the painting preparation process will pay dividends when the painting is finished. Plus, I'll share a little secret with you. You can build up a library of reusable mixing palettes for future use by, instead of discarding your mixing palette, you save it off in a separate document. Over time, you'll come up with a really nice library of preset color sets you can use to create loaded brushes with.